This is Limelight America. Here's your host, Michael Drew Shaw.
Thank you, Lynette, and welcome to Limelight America, where we present one-on-one personal conversations with interesting people from all walks of life. These up-close encounters with people of the fascinating and inspiring kind include business, entertainment, sports, and artistic entrepreneurs, scholars, role models, and philanthropists who impact the quality of life for us all. We're talking with Thaddeus Warrow, the author of Radicals and Visionaries. I have to believe you have a couple of favorites.
Growing up seeing I Love Lucy, I always considered Lucy to be a brilliant comedian and Desi just her straight man. Desi was not only an excellent businessman, but he was quite an innovator.
All right, you build companies to sell them. I started out with Chongqing Chinese Foods in 1944, and I sold to R.J. Reynolds Tobacco for $63 million in '67. I have 7 banks because I had to put the money somewhere.
Radio's most talked about talk show, Limelight America.
When the chips are down, an entrepreneur will find a way. 25-year-old Herman began peddling potato chips out of his trunk in 1931. Soon, he had 6 regions and was growing fast when his supplier ran into money trouble. Herman bought the supplier and continued to expand his territory. In 1945, he became a corn chip distributor for Dallas-based Frito Company. In 1961, Herman Lay merged with the firm to become Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay merged with Pepsi in 1965, and that is how a Tennessee potato chip salesman became chairman of the board of PepsiCo. Something to think about the next time your chips are down. Coming up, John Bello, co-founder of the South Beach Beverage Company, an outstanding entrepreneur, an Entrepreneur of the Year award winner. Entrepreneur is sort of an overused word these days. We were curious about what kids and people in general think the word means, so we asked.
Entrepreneur. I think it means like to never give up.
Entrepreneur is a business salesperson.
Entrepreneur, a person who takes risks.
I think that entrepreneur means for someone to get a job.
Entrepreneur. I have no clue what it means.
Entrepreneur is someone who's in business.
Interperior?
I think an entrepreneur means someone who helps other people or encourages them.
And repetcher.
Entrepreneur takes an idea of what people need, develops a plan.
An individual who desires to run his own business, be his own boss.
My definition of an entrepreneur is a successful business person, one that has taken an opportunity and made it very successful.
Definition of entrepreneur, I'd say someone that looks into the future.
Entrepreneur.
Successful, independent.
Someone who doesn't know any better. It's the truth. They don't know any better. It honestly is about people who just don't know any better. They really don't. They take a huge risk.
Limelight America is a lot about entrepreneurship in this country. We try to present an uplifting style of talk radio, featuring people who are changing the world with not just new, revolutionary ideas, in some cases, simple acts of kindness. We also showcase unforgettable people, places, and events. Our program is compiled from a wide range of libraries, historical collections, and legacy websites. And we thank the dedicated people responsible for preserving the rich history we share with our listeners. Some of our side dishes include the Dream Warriors, original mini-biographies about American business pioneers that illustrate the imagination and perseverance it takes to achieve an entrepreneurial goal. Ever had a bottle of lizard lava or sugar-free Sobe Adrenaline Rush? How about Sobe's Black Tea 3G or Sobe Energy or LifeWater Blackberry Grape? These are just a few of the names that came out of the head of John Bello. The South Beach Beverage Company is a manufacturer of teas, fruit juice blends, and energy drinks sold under the acronym Sobe. Sobe was founded in Norwalk, Connecticut back in 1996 and became a subsidiary of PepsiCo. The Sobe name is also licensed for gum and chocolate products. John Joseph Bello is a marketing executive best known for creating and building the Sobe brand of New Age beverages. Today we're going to highlight his career. By the way, you can get the whole story on John at Wikipedia. Bello is a 1964 graduate of Plainsville, Connecticut High School. He went on to Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts on a Navy ROTC scholarship. There, he played football for 2 years, played in a rock and roll band called the What For. After graduation, John served a 4-year stint in the Navy that included a tour of duty in South Vietnam, where he was responsible for running a commissary on the Mekong Delta. When he came back to the United States, John entered Dartmouth College and graduated cum laude with an MBA in 1974. His first foray into the business world was with PepsiCo, where he worked in marketing and strategic planning. He moved to General Foods, where he was involved with brand management with the Sanka and Maxwell House franchises. He also picked up some experience with athletic wear, serving as product director for Keds brands. In 1979, John Bello joined the National Football League, where he ascended to the position of president of NFL Properties. That was in 1987. He is credited with transforming licensed apparel from a small NFL business selling novelty merchandise in specialty stores into must-have fashion. In the process, during Bello's tenure at National Football League Properties, the business went from $30 million in retail sales to $3 billion. That's where it stood when he left in 1993. In doing this, Bello created a business model that is now followed by the merchandising arms of all pro and college sports teams, leagues, and associations. Now, he made his mark. You'd think that'd be enough for John, but not so fast. After he left the NFL, he headed back to the beverage business, got a job with the makers of Arizona iced tea. But after the first 6 months with Arizona, his entrepreneurial spirit took over and he left. He went on to create a partnership with Kevin McGovern and Tom Schwalm. That became the South Beach Beverage Company, named after the trendy section down in Miami. The new company, based in Norwalk, Connecticut, marketed so-called New Age beverages, exotic juice blends, and ready-to-drink iced teas. But it got off to an inauspicious start. Perceived as nothing more than just another Me Too brand by distributors and mom-and-pop retailers up and down the street, South Beach faced formidable competition from its predecessors, including Snapple, Mystic, Nantucket Nectars in Arizona. South Beach needed a real point of differentiation in the marketplace, and it was here that John Bello's marketing savvy turned the company's fortunes around. Since the natives of South Beach call their enclave Sobe, Bello decided to relaunch the brand under that moniker. Then he would add trace elements of various herbs. This enabled him to promote benefits beyond just hydration. So they launched a 3G line of drinks, all of which included energy boosters. John was also the creative force behind the now famous dueling lizards design, which has become an iconic logo in the consumer packaged goods industry. Finally, he gave the brand an attitude by enlisting the likes of athletes who were famous but somewhat out of the mainstream. Guys like bombastic golfer John Daly. Bello himself took a lead role in the company's guerrilla marketing effort, proclaiming himself as the Lizard King. He actually gave me a pair of lizard socks when I met him in Palm Springs, California. Then, the Sobe marketing team, led by Bello, approached independent Snapple distributors, those wholesalers that had non-exclusive deals with Snapple, which was then far and away the New Age beverage king, and offered them a deal they couldn't refuse, a very high margin and a small chunk of equity in his company. The result was nothing short of astounding. After coming from literally nothing in 1995, Sobe sales climbed from $67 million in 1998 to $167 million in 1999. The following year, the brand literally took off, riding the good for you trend among American consumers. At the beginning of the new millennium, Sobe broke the $250 million barrier. In 2001, John Bello was named Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year in the Consumer Products category for his accomplishments at Sobe. That's when I first met him. And in retrospect, this is a rather interesting conversation. Hello, John. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Well, first of all, identify the product, because that's what our audience will relate to.
1994, 95, right after I left NFL Properties, I partnered with a friend and a business associate. Between us, we had 26 years of beverage experience. He had 24, I had 2, and we thought it'd be a good idea to start a beverage company. Concept was, we thought we'd capture what I call the healthy hedonistic lifestyle that's reflected in South Beach, Florida, and he and I got on a plane, and we liked what we saw, and we created a product all around that, and actually launched the product a year later. Wasn't as successful as we wanted to be. We wanted to compete with Snapple in Arizona, and frankly, our product line wasn't radically different. Didn't have great success with the first concept. We basically walked away from $3 million in investment capital and started over again, repositioning the product.
Wow. What was the problem the first time around, do you think?
We didn't have anything that was exciting, new, and different in a category that was exciting, new, and different. And I'm talking about from a retailer perspective, from a distributor perspective, and even a consumer perspective. Yes, we had a lemon tea, but so did Arizona, so did Snapple. We had a grape, they did too. There's some things about what we did that first time around that were good, so we decided to basically reposition the product. We had a lizard on our package that had a lot of notoriety in terms of what people were saying, and my daughter suggested we juxtapose the lizard. We boiled some Thai paste from Braveheart, simplified the package, and created brand new products. The first one being black tea that had ginseng, ginkgo, and guarana in it. And this is all based on the concept that people want to be stronger, smarter, skinnier, and sexier, and are willing to pay for it. And if they think that those herbs and those vitamins and those minerals will help them do that, we win. We relaunched the product, and it just took off. A lot of distributors of Snapple and Arizona came to us and said, we'll take a whole line of that.
At that point, it was no longer South Beach. It was
we changed it to Sobe.
Whose idea was that?
My daughter. So they had that trademark. Sobe is short for South Beach, and that's how the locals down in South Beach, Florida, referred to South Beach as Sobe. So we really took it to another level with that, and a combination of all those things just clicked. It really worked. Stars started lining up, and we started selling as much as we could possibly make, and we had national coverage within 2 years, and we were a $250 million company within 3 years. Coke started looking at us. We had a number of investors who wanted to take something off the table. Once you have a product that sells as well and captures the public imagination, you just have to get it to them in every venue possible. We had great distributors, they were just limited. As it turns out, the Coke situation didn't work out. Too many lawyers, too many regulators, too many accountants, and not enough people to make decisions. And Pepsi at the 11th hour just swooped right in and said, we like what you're doing here. We are a total beverage company. We will allow you to continue to run the company as it is.
Is that what you wanted, John? Did you want to stay active, involved in the project?
Yes, I did, and and not because of the money, because we got the money. I really think that it's a dream of mine, and I think it's a dream of any entrepreneur to create a brand that has longevity and a legacy, and it's a brand with a soul. The other thing about Sobe is it's totally a virtual company. All we owned is trademark. We owned a couple buses that would break down, sampling buses, but we had no factories, we had no truck, we had no plants that would make the product. Everything was outsourced, but all of the people involved in the whole creation of Sobe all had a vested stake in its success, and they all did very, very well, from the glass manufacturers, to the label manufacturers, to the concentrate manufacturers, to the distributors. It's a beautiful thing.
National Entrepreneur of the Year award winner in the retail category, who is now going to put on his sunglasses and his iridescent neck bracelet and go in and disco.
Yeah, life is good. It's all good.
Okay, John.
Happy to be here.
You're listening to Limelight America.
The 20th century marked an era of unprecedented progress, growth, and ingenuity. In the entertaining collection, this intriguing series of profiles called Radicals and Visionaries, here on Limelight America, we're going to meet 36 groundbreaking entrepreneurs who fueled the 21st century with their explosion of achievement. It shaped our modern world as we know it today. Radicals and Visionaries reveals the complete stories of both the legendary masters of enterprise and the unsung entrepreneurial heroes. We're going to discover little-known facts, and we'll learn the success secrets of people like A.P. Giannini, the green grocer with no financial experience, who took on the suits and founded the world's largest bank. Ron Popeil, the part-time carnival huckster whose late-night TV commercials for kitchen gadgets kicked off the infomercial phenomenon. Former cabaret singer Coco Chanel, who thumbed her nose at the suffocating styles of the 19th century and sparked a fashion revolution that still influences designers today. From the turn-of-the-century capitalists who ushered in the industrial age to the mass-market moguls who molded pop culture, Radicals and Visionaries is a lively, revealing, and often astonishing chronicle of the lives and accomplishments of some of the most influential entrepreneurs ever known. And today we're going to visit with Thaddeus Warrow. He is an award-winning advertising copywriter, direct marketing consultant, and the author of Radicals and Visionaries. He lives in Los Angeles. What inspired you to write this book?
Initially, my editor, Marla Markham, came to me with this idea about doing a Millennium book about the entrepreneurs of the 20th century. I jumped at the chance because, in my opinion, the 20th century was the golden age of the entrepreneur.
Dealing with such a broad space of time, how did you make your selections?
It was actually a group effort. Marla Markham, again, my editor, Riva Lisansky, the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, and myself each put together our own lists and then compared them. From our group lists, we came up with our final list of entrepreneurs. What we were looking for was to get as broad a range of entrepreneurs as possible. We didn't just want the typical business or technology entrepreneurs. We also wanted the entrepreneurs involved in entertainment and the cultural aspects of the 20th century.
Okay, so now you've got your A list. How did you orchestrate your research from that point on?
Spent a lot of time in the library and a lot of time on the internet. I researched books, magazines, newspapers, anything I could get my hands on from third-party sources. I also contacted the companies that these entrepreneurs founded and got any information I could from their historians, if they had them, from their archives, and any biographies that they had created.
Did you ever meet or talk with any of the entrepreneurs you profiled?
I talked with several, not as many as I would like to because of the sheer volume of the book. It was very difficult, and of course these are very difficult people to get in touch with because they're time constraints. But I did get a chance to talk to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, both of whom I found very fascinating and pretty much from the opposite ends of the spectrum. I also spoke with Lillian Vernon, and I spoke with Ruth Handler of Mattel.
I have to believe you have a couple of favorites. Who were they and why?
Certainly, I had quite a few favorites. First off, I would have to say Henry Ford. In my opinion, he is the most important entrepreneur of the 20th century. His innovation in mass production, being able to create an automobile that everyone can afford, basically turned our country from a rural country into an urban country. I also am pretty fond of Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. Now, growing up seeing I Love Lucy, I always considered Lucy to be a brilliant comedian and Desi just her straight man. But as I researched it, I found out that Desi was not only an excellent businessman, but he was quite an innovator. Many of the techniques that are currently being used, and probably will continue to be used, in the filming of sitcoms and other TV programs were actually first created by Desi Arnaz.
How would you compare today's entrepreneurs with earlier ones?
I think they're pretty much the same. I think it's the world that they live in that has changed so much. Throughout the 19th century and into the early 20th century, the word entrepreneur actually had a negative connotation. A lot of people thought that an entrepreneur was just somebody who didn't want to get a real job. Because of the stigma attached to it, it was much harder for these people to get started. It's much harder to get the kind of funding, the capital, and support that later entrepreneurs in the later half of the 20th century were able to find through their white knights and their venture capitalists.
Thaddeus Warrow, author of Radicals and Visionaries, the fascinating series we'll be sharing with you during the coming weeks and months on Limelight America.
Fascinating people, up close and personal. This is Limelight America.
In 1999, New Star Productions was air testing several new features on 4 Ohio radio stations. One feature was simply called The Entrepreneurs. 3 to 4 minute segments about real people behind well-known brand names like Chef Hector Boiardi and Clarence Birdseye. During the research and writing process, we noticed that every story had a similarity. There was always some unexpected or accidental event that either led to a new idea or finally got a struggling concept off the ground. So we focused on what we call the serendipity of entrepreneurship. When the test features hit the air, the audience reaction was immediate. The phone started ringing with people calling in to say how much they enjoyed the short stories. That in itself was remarkable. we knew we were onto something. It was a significant discovery that eventually evolved into the Dream Warriors radio series of 1-minute mini biographies about American business pioneers. The most inspiring 60 seconds in radio made its national debut on America's first radio station, KDKA in Pittsburgh. Christina Jones prides her company on its philosophy of hiring based on ability rather than experience or age. She should know. At 19, she started her first company. In her late 20s, she founded PC Order and revolutionized the computer market, providing real-time product information and directly linking distributors, reseller, and manufacturers with tools they need to sell products and disseminate product information over the internet. With $21 million in sales, Christina could sit back and enjoy the fruits of her labor, but instead, she often works weekends. Building the success of her business is still her favorite pastime. Young Payak immigrated to the United States from Seoul in 1956 with $50 in his wallet and little knowledge of the English language. Yet what he lacked in capital, he more than made up for in self-assurance and determination. He put himself through school bussing tables. 19 years later, after working with various steel companies, Payak established his own company and sent shockwaves through the industry with his innovative ideas. Despite the skepticism of his peers, Payco Steel and Engineering captured a majority of the market in just 10 years and diversified into product inception, development, testing, and manufacturing. I might have had only $50 when I came here, he says, but I knew my natural talent was worth a lot more than that. Jim Henson started his brilliant 34-year career in 1954 on a morning TV show in Washington, D.C. when he was still in high school. The show needed a part-time puppeteer, so Henson fashioned a hand puppet out of an old green coat and 2 ping-pong balls. It turned out to be the forerunner of the now famous Sesame Street characters. Henson once said, "Nobody creates a fad, it just happens." People love going along with the idea of a beautiful pig. At the heart of his success was the warmth and consideration the Muppets showed for each other, a wonderful example for children and adults alike in the often crude and cynical age we live in today. More about Jim Henson another time. What do Eddie Murphy, the Nutty Professor, and the Beastie Boys all have in common? A guy from Queens who moved rap from the streets to the mainstream of American pop culture. The unconventional visionary who founded Def Jam Records in 1983 with a few $1,000s sold it to Universal Music 16 years later for $120 million. Expanding into publishing, fashion, and television, Rush Communications grew into one of the largest black-owned entertainment companies in the U.S., proving that if you believe in yourself, you can turn ideas into reality. Russell Simmons, America's hip-hopreneur.
Fascinating people, up close and personal. This is Limelight America.
While on an Arctic expedition in 1915, Clarence Birdseye caught a fish. It froze immediately. When he thawed it for dinner 6 months later, it tasted like he'd caught it that morning. Efforts to freeze food in the United States had failed because nothing kept its flavor or texture. Speed was the answer. Birdseye developed a quick freeze machine and went into business, but he could not overcome the consumer's negative image of frozen food. He decided to partner with cereal maker Postum Company. A massive promotional campaign was launched to upgrade the image of frozen foods. As part of its marketing effort, Postum divided Birdseye's name in two, creating the famous Birdseye trademark. You know, I have always been curious about what makes entrepreneurs tick, what drives us to do what we do, what keeps us going when the odds are against us, even when our past is littered with unsatisfied dreams. When I began my radio career, little did I know I was beginning a long and often lonely journey as an entrepreneur. But looking back, I can understand how it happened. Radio taught me how to flex my head, how to use my imagination, and once that fire was lit, I was hooked. A new idea is still what motivates me more than anything else, even money. For me, it's always about the chase. When people ask what makes me an entrepreneur, I tell them that I'm on fire with ignorance, and believe me, that is both a blessing and a curse. The impact of being a disc jockey playing America's Top 40 is still hard to describe. It was truly an awesome experience. It all began with the Beach Boys and Marvin Gaye and Manfred Doo-Wah Diddy Diddy Man. But for me, things quickly changed as I moved from the studio into sales, promotion, and then management. After several attempts at buying my own station, impatience drove me in other directions, and I forged ahead frantically searching for my pot of gold. And now, I feel like the wayward son returning to the one thing he never should have left in the first place. As I have now returned to radio to host Limelight America, I look back on recent years and sort of feel that everything I've been doing lately has been a rehearsal for what is next. Walter Hayes, a former vice chairman of Ford Europe, believes that success produces many heroes, and there is never a shortage of fathers willing to claim parenthood. Only failures become orphans. And that is why this radio program will feature as many orphans as billionaires. I have met some remarkable people, and their enthusiasm is a big part of what keeps me going. Sandra picked up her brand new car on a perfect summer day, under a clear blue sky with a cool breeze wafting off the ocean. Ron, the salesman who'd arranged her purchase 2 days earlier, greeted her at the showroom door with a broad, warm smile and a firm handshake. A waiting assistant promptly took the keys to her dusty, mile-weary trade-in and drove it around the corner out of sight. Ron had all the documents ready and laid out in the exact order Sandra needed to sign them. As she executed the title, financing, and other paperwork, Sandra enjoyed a freshly brewed cup of coffee and some friendly banter with Ron. In no time at all, her sparkling new Lexus was purring at the showroom curb, her new partner in a journey that would take them many thousands of miles. Sandra settled into the driver's seat, breathed in the earthy scent of the new leather, and eased her new chariot out of the parking lot and into the afternoon traffic. She turned on the radio and pushed the first auto-select button to begin programming her preferred radio stations, the first act of new car ownership. Her face lit up as her favorite Top 40 station filled the air with a tune she was especially fond of. She warbled along as she weaved her way through traffic toward home. When the first commercial came on, she pushed the next select button. A swelling of violins flowed from the speakers. This was her favorite classical station. Amazing, she thought. She tried the next button, and on came her favorite all-news station. The fourth button summoned her husband's favorite sports channel. This was getting spooky. Had technology reached a stage of development that made it possible for a car to read her mind? She reached home, pulled into her driveway, and immediately telephoned Ron to tell him about this amazing coincidence. "You wouldn't believe it," she gushed. "I just had to call and tell you. I must be doing something right. Every one of my favorite radio stations was already pre-selected. What an amazing coincidence." Ron chuckled. "That was no coincidence. When a customer buys a new car and we take a trade-in, we check the old radio, write down the stations on the set, and then program the new ones to match." In that moment, Sandra became a devoted, loyal customer of the dealer and of Ron. That's Four Walls Marketing.
Limelight America is produced by the LA Radio Network.